Hello, everyone. My name is Anne Cowling, and I am your host for tonight. I would like to welcome you to the Story Cafe, somewhere over the rainbow, stories of hope and transformation. We are performing from Calgary, Alberta, which is Treaty 7 land. Before we start, Chantal Chagnon will give us a land acknowledgement and a traditional Cree welcome song. Chantal?
Thank you, Anne. Tansei, Oki, Bonjour, hello. My name is Chantal Chagnon. I am Cree, Anishinaabe, and Métis from Muskrat Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, which is in Treaty 6 territory. But tonight I would like to welcome you to the land upon which we stand, Treaty 7 territory. Calgary was also known as Mokinstis, which literally means elbow in Blackfoot. It was a place to bring people together, to gather, to share stories, to share community, to share in ceremony and food and trade. And the spirit of Mokinstis is still alive and well today when we see events like this where we're able to share our stories in a meaningful way. To welcome everybody into the circle today, I wanted to acknowledge the people who were here before us, the Blackfoot of Siksika, Kainai, and Bagani, the people of Sarsidene, which are Tsutsuna, and the Stoney Nakoda from Morley, which includes Chiniki, Bears Paw, and Wesley First Nations. We're also walking in the footsteps of Métis Region 3, which is why I proudly wear my Métis sash, to act as that bridge between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. When we acknowledge the land, we're actually acknowledging far more than that. We're acknowledging the relationships that we have to each other and to the land. We're acknowledging the responsibility that we have to learn from our past through our stories and share those stories with our future generations. And so I would like to share with you the Cree Welcome Song. Traditionally, when we sing songs, we sing in rounds of 4 to honor the 4 directions of the medicine wheel. But this song is a little bit different. We actually sing it in rounds of 3, and that's to keep the circle open and welcoming so everyone completes the circle tonight. Because in a circle, we're all connected. There's no beginning, there's no end. No one is greater or less than anyone else in the circle, just like in the hoop of life. So it teaches us to honor each other for those differences. Because if everybody was exactly the same, the world would be incredibly boring and nothing would ever get done. So we need those differences to make all of our community work, to be able to thrive and be resilient together. Mia Sin, which is the Cree welcome song, is from the Natahau family from Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation, which is on the border of Saskatchewan and Alberta. And so I honor that family whenever I share this song. Mia Sin doesn't just mean welcome, it also means beautiful. Mia Sin, Mia Sin, Hasemina, Hasemina, Epetakote, Niwagomagan, Hota, Homa, Kitaskino, Miasin, Miasen, Hasemina, Hasemina, Epetakote, Niwagomagan, Hota, Homa, Kitaskino, Miasin, Miasen, Hasemina, Hasemina, Epetakote, Niwagomagan, Hota, Homa, to the circle today, everyone. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Chantal. As I mentioned, my name is Anne Cowling, and I'm a storyteller with Storytelling Alberta. We practice the art of oral storytelling, which means not written. We're a charitable organization with a mission to spread story in whatever way possible, including with story cafes like this one. And now we come full circle to the very beginning. Chantal will now tell the Cree creation story. Chantal?
Tansei again, everyone. So this story is, I should call it the recreation story, because we were here before. We're known as the two-leggeds because, of course, we walk around on two legs when we're not flattened by elephants, of course. Now, as we were first created on this planet, there was a spirit called Wisakajak, and Wisakajak was supposed to teach us how to live on the land. He was supposed to teach us how to take care of the earth and the air and the water, and how to take care of the animals, and how to honor and respect each other. But Wisakajak, he is a little bit lazy, and he kind of dropped the ball on that. And so we didn't learn how to live in a good way. And so because we didn't learn how to honor the land and harvest appropriately, we were ripping everything out by the roots. We were taking more than what we needed and just leaving everything that we didn't use everywhere. And so the plants didn't have an opportunity to recover or grow back. And so all of the crops and fields, they just started dying. And there was really not a lot for us to eat. The animals who we were also eating, we didn't honor and respect them. We were hunting them too early in the season, and we weren't giving them a chance to replenish themselves either, just like the plants. And so they ended up almost dying out, to the point where all of the ones that were left ran away from the two-leggeds because they knew we were bad news. The two-leggeds didn't take care of the water or the fish, and they were throwing their garbage in the water, and the water started to run almost black with sickness, and the fish started to die. And then all of the air, because it couldn't be filtered by the plants and it couldn't be helped by the water, that started to get sick too. So it became harder and harder and harder to breathe. And the two-leggeds, when there was very, very little left, there was very little in the way of water, there was very little in the way of food, no animals to be seen anywhere, they of course started fighting over the scraps that were left, and in turn killed each other out. And Creator saw the whole mess of the earth and thought, whoa, 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 wait a second here. All right, we need a do-over. We need a mulligan, because obviously the first time around with the two-leggeds didn't go very well. And so Creator was looking for Wisakajak and saw him sleeping under a tree and said, oh, it's time. And so it started to rain. Now Wisakajak, he was protected under a tree, and so he didn't really get too wet. So he continued to take his little nap. And as it continued to rain harder, the bank of the river that he was sleeping close to started to get higher and higher and run over his toes. So he pulled his toes up, and he continued to try and fight and nap some more. And then that river continued to raise with the waters falling from the sky and hit his knees. Then he woke up with a start, and he realized that this rain wasn't going to stop anytime soon, and that all of this water was going to continue to raise and raise and raise, because Creator needed a mulligan. And so he thought, okay, well, if the earth is going to flood, we're going to have to rebuild the earth, and I'm not quite sure how to do that. So I'm going to go talk to the beaver, because the beaver is the smartest animal I know. So Wisakajak went to the beaver and he said, Beaver, beaver, there's going to be a flood coming, and we're going to have to save any animals that are left, and we're going to have to rebuild the earth after it's done. What should we do? And the beaver thought for a moment, and she thought, and she thought. Then she said, well, let's go talk to the cedar tree. The cedar tree was the oldest living cedar tree on earth. She had seen the rise and fall of so many portions of the earth, and she was so old and wise. She was thousands of years old, and her size was just magnificent. You could drive trucks through her. She was huge, and she also had all of the wisdom from all of her years. And so the beaver went to her and said, Cedar tree, there's a huge flood coming. How are we going to protect the animals, and how are we going to rebuild the earth? And the cedar tree said very graciously, Beaver, you will have to cut me down and hollow me out, and all of the animals that were left will climb inside me, and I will protect them. And then you can rebuild once the flooding is done. And the beaver didn't want to cut the cedar tree down. She said, no, cedar, there has to be another way. And the cedar tree said very graciously again, no, Beaver, there's no other way. I've seen this happen before, and I hope not to see it happen again. But I will be back. And so, very carefully, the beaver cut down the cedar tree. The cedar tree was so large that when she finally cracked and fell over, as she hit the ground, the whole earth shook. And all of the animals heard the shaking and felt it in their bones, and so ran from all directions to the cedar tree. And as they got there, they saw Beaver was hollowing out the beautiful cedar tree, and they knew that this was their last chance to be saved. So all of the animals climbed in the beautiful boat that the beaver and the cedar had created, and they waited. As the final animal got in the boat, it began to rain harder and harder and harder, and they watched as all of the rivers burst their banks and spilled onto the land, as the oceans rose over, coated the earth, and linked up and connected to the rivers, until the whole earth was coated in water. And as they continued to watch it rain harder and harder, they watched as the land sunk deeper and deeper and deeper into the darkness of the ocean. And then they waited for what seemed like days and nights and days and nights. It seemed like forever. They didn't think it was ever going to stop raining. But then one day, it did. And Wisakajak knew that meant it was time for them to rebuild the earth. But how were they going to do that? I'll go ask the beaver, because again, the beaver's the smartest animal he knew. And so he went to the beaver and he said, Beaver, Beaver, it stopped raining. We can rebuild the earth. How are we going to do it? And the beaver said, and she thought for a moment, and she thought for a moment, and she thought for a moment, and she said, well, I suppose someone would have to dive down to the bottom of the ocean and grab some land so we could rebuild. And Wisakajak said, that's a beautiful idea. Who's going to do it? And the beaver said, well, I'm a pretty good swimmer. Let me try. And so the beaver hopped out of the side of the boat. She swam down deeper and deeper and deeper, but she couldn't reach the bottom. There was no way she could hold her breath that long. She came up to the surface and said, Wisakajak, it is so far down, I don't think anyone can reach the bottom. And Wisakajak said, well, it's pretty far down, but I'm sure the biggest animals might be able to reach the bottom because they're so big. Maybe they'll displace some of the water and they'll get to the bottom. And so he asked the larger animals in the boat, who can reach the bottom? Who can swim and reach the bottom? And the moose said, well, I can try. I'm quite a good swimmer, and I can always reach the bottom of lakes. Let me try. And so she dove down deeper and deeper and deeper, but of course she couldn't reach the bottom. So she swam out to the surface and said, Wisakajak, it is so far down. I could not hold my breath that long, and I don't think anyone could reach the bottom. I couldn't even see it. And so she got back in the boat. And the bear, who was always quite proud of himself, was like, well, I could try. I'm a pretty great swimmer. So he dove out of the boat. But unfortunately, it was shortly after hibernation season, so he'd put on a lot of weight. And so he just kind of bobbed in the water a little bit, and all of the animals said, oh, bear, get back in the boat. This is unbearable to watch. And so he climbed back into the boat. And then Wisakajak said, well, what about the best divers? If you guys can fly so high, you can dive so deep. so perhaps the divers could do it. Well, the eagle, who could soar the highest, said, well, I will try. And so the eagle soared high, high, high into the sky and reached the highest point that he'd ever reached before, dove straight down into the water, but could not reach the bottom. And then the kingfisher, who is probably the most efficient diver of any of the birds, most of the animals actually, was saying, well, maybe I could reach the bottom. I'm a fantastic swimmer, a fantastic diver. Let me try. And so the kingfisher flew the highest that he had ever flown before, took the deepest breath when he reached that highest point, and dove straight down into the water, cutting it like a knife. And he used his wings to push down deeper and deeper and deeper. But unfortunately, he couldn't reach the bottom either. He swam up to the top and said, Wasakajak, it is so far down, I don't think anyone will be able to reach the bottom. And then Wasakajak asked the best swimmers, well, you guys are the most wonderful swimmers. Beaver had already tried. Who else is a wonderful swimmer who can hold their breath for a really long time? And the turtle said, well, I can hold my breath for a very long time. And I'm a great swimmer, so let me try. And so she dove out of the side of the boat, and the turtle dove down deeper and deeper and deeper. But the deeper she got, the harder the pressure on her shell became, and it started to crack. As she swam up to the surface and she pulled herself back into the boat, all of the animals looked at her shell, which had cracked into 13 pieces, with 28 tiny cracks along the edges, which is now what we see in the turtle shell. And she said, Wasakajak, it is so far down, I don't think anyone can reach the bottom. And then the fastest swimmer said, well, we could probably reach the bottom. And so the fastest swimmer of them all, who also has the most fun, the otter, jumped out of the boat, and he dove down deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, but he couldn't reach the bottom. He came back up to the top and said, Wasakajak, it's so far down, there's no way anybody could reach the bottom. I couldn't reach the bottom. There's no way anybody could reach the bottom. And climbed back into the boat. All of the animals were feeling without hope. They had waited so long for the rain to stop, and now that it had, they couldn't even rebuild the earth because they had no earth to rebuild. And all of them were feeling overwhelmed and saddened. And then there was a tiny voice from inside the boat that said, I can do it. And they all looked around and they said, well, who said that? And again they heard the voice, I can do it. And they looked around and they said again, who said that? And then the tiny little muskrat came through the crowd of animals, stood up on her hind legs, puffed out her chest very proudly, and said, I can do it. And all of the animals just started erupting in laughter. All of the great, great, large animals said, Muskrat, you're so tiny and puny. How are you supposed to reach the bottom? We couldn't reach the bottom. All of the divers started laughing at her, saying, Muskrat, you're not a good diver at all. How are you supposed to reach the bottom if we couldn't reach the bottom? The best swimmers started laughing at her, saying, oh, Muskrat, there is no way you could reach the bottom. We couldn't hold our breath that long. How are you supposed to reach the bottom? And then all of the fastest swimmers started laughing at her. Muskrat, you're so slow. There's no way you can reach the bottom. We couldn't reach the bottom. How are you supposed to reach the bottom? And so as all of the animals were laughing at her, she ignored it. And she stood on the side of the boat and very proudly exclaimed, I can do it. She took the deepest breath that she'd ever taken in her life, and she dove straight into the water. As she dove down deeper and deeper and deeper, all of the animals realized Muskrat was gone. Muskrat had left the boat, and they watched over the side to watch her disappear into the darkness. And then they waited. And they waited for her to come back, but she didn't. And then they began to worry. As it got longer and longer, they knew that there was no way that Muskrat could have held her breath that long. As they watched over the side of the boat, they saw a single bubble of air float to the surface. And they knew that that was Muskrat's very last breath. And they started to cry. They cried and they cried and they cried so hard that they turned all of the ocean salty. They said, Muskrat, Muskrat, why would you do that? Why would you give up your life? And we can't even rebuild the earth. And then Wasakajak continued to watch over the side of the boat for any form of hope. And as he watched, he saw a tiny silhouette floating out of the darkness. As that shadow got closer and closer and closer to the boat, he realized that was Muskrat's lifeless body. And so as she got close, he reached in with all his might and he held her close to his heart and he began to cry. He cried and he cried and he cried so hard that he wiped all of the color off Muskrat's belly. All of the animals were so sad that Muskrat had given her life for them. And as everyone was crying and wondering what to do, and they felt without hope and they had lost their friend, Muskrat's tiny little paw flopped open. And in the palm of her hand was a little ball of earth. Muskrat had done it. She had reached the bottom with her last breath and brought it back with her for her friends so they could rebuild the earth. All of the animals were so overjoyed that they could rebuild the earth, but so sad that they had lost such a good friend in Muskrat. It was a very strange feeling to be so sad but so happy at the same time. And Wisakajack took that ball of earth and said, well, who will carry this ball of earth on their back? The turtle said, I will carry the earth on my back, and climbed into the water. And as she did, Wisakajack took that ball of earth and he rolled it in a circle. As he rolled it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it got heavier and heavier and heavier until it pushed the turtle beneath the waves, and until it branched out so much that it created all the land we now see all over the world, which is why we call our Earth Turtle Island. And Wisakajack knew he had to get to work, so he asked all of the animals to leave the beautiful cedar boat and go to their place on the earth. And then he took a deep breath to the east, and as he did, Grandfather Sun came out from behind the clouds. A huge rainbow of hope shot across the sky. And as Grandfather Sun warmed the earth, all of the little plants started to grow back. They just started to sprout everywhere. All of the beautiful animals, their bellies became full and pregnant with the babies. And then Wisakajack took a deep breath to the south, and as he did, the earth began to rumble. It began to shake. Huge mountains started shooting up and reaching into the sky. Huge hills started rolling across the prairies. Beautiful landscapes started to develop. Deserts started to develop, and beautiful valleys formed. Wisakajack took another deep breath, and he blew again to the west, and as he did, Grandmother Moon came out, and she shone with all her might, and she pushed with all of her love, and all of the waters washed over Turtle Island. As she pulled, all of the waters receded. She pushed again, and the waters rushed forward. She pulled back, and the waters receded, and as she did, she pushed the tides in and out, in and out. This is why Mother Moon controls the tides. And then all of the different lakes and valleys and streams and rivers all began to form all over Turtle Island. Then Wisakajack took another deep breath to the north, and as he did, the winds began to spin. All of the earth began to spin. It started to spin faster and faster and faster. Grandmother Moon and Grandfather Sun started to push and pull and push and pull with all of their might to slow the beautiful earth down. And as they did, they created the days and the nights, the weeks and the months, and the seasons and the years, the decades and beyond. And all of the winds, as they spun all over Turtle Island, the plants and the animals took a breath for their very first time and were gifted a sacred breath, which was a breath of wisdom that we all share. And we've been sharing that same breath with our ancestors for many, many years. And then Wisakajack took that beautiful muskrat and blew into her that breath. And Muskrat took her sacred breath. She came back to life, and she was so thankful and humbled for Wisakajack to give her gift of life. Wisakajack was so thankful, as were all of the other animals, for having the ability to rebuild the earth, for Muskrat's sacrifice of her own life for the betterment of everyone. And to this day, the muskrat symbolizes hope and she symbolizes sacrifice for the greater good. And that is the Cree creation story. And to go with that story, I'm going to share with you the creator song. So this Cree creator song is, it was gifted to me from a friend of mine. She actually shared it with me. And for some reason, when I first heard the song, it just stuck with me. And when songs are meant for you, they tend to do that. But when I learned it, I was so thankful to have learned it, and I brought it to my great aunt, and I was singing and drumming with her. She's in an extended care facility because she needs a little bit of extra help with her health. But as I was drumming and singing this song with to her, she started to sing along with me. And after I was done, I was like, Auntie, how do you know this song? She's like, how do you know this song? This is our family song. Where did you find it? We thought it was lost. And so it goes to show that when you're on the right path, good things come to you. When you're reclaiming your culture, reclaiming who you are, and finding your path in the world, the things that are meant for you to carry, you will. And so this is the Cree creator song, which honors all life. In Cree, we always say all my relations, because we're all related. Hi everyone, and all my relations.
Thank you so much, Chantal, for sharing your gifts tonight. That was just wonderful.